also, the other thing that I wanted to focus on is a little bit about what Gab started with in the morning, is to talk about all the different disciplines and how the technology that we had a look at today can help us into our day-to-day lives. So one thing that I wanted to demonstrate is similar to what Clive was doing, but just one step ahead. And this is step number one of what some of my colleagues at DXC are trying to do. Let's hope. If I remove the mute, I'm not going to have reverb, am I?
You probably just have to share your sound.
Share, yeah.
This meeting? No. Still fine? HDMI.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hope it works. So this is a colleague of mine, Anthony Butcher. He is demonstrating, he's leading some of our AI capabilities at DXC, and he's demonstrating to what extent we can use it. Hopefully the sound will work.
Morning team, welcome to the daily stand-up. As you can see, I'm in the office and it's as busy as normal. Every working home like yourself, Stephen. Good morning, Alex. Could you say good morning to the team?
Good morning, team.
Well, that was short and precise. All right, so let's review where we are. So, Stephen, I know you and the guys been working on the custom branding. Is that going well?
Yes, so the custom branding has been going well. We've completed, 3 out of the 4 user stories that we've got in our sprint boards. We just need to be working on the last one today.
Yeah, look, I have a soft requirement from the client. They love the forms. They work on every device. That's great, but unfortunately they don't print off an A4 paper. Alex, can you take some CSS from the team and make it work so that it'll print on A4 paper?
Sure. I could take a look at the CSS and make the necessary adjustments to ensure the forms print correctly on A4 paper.
That's awesome news. Right, there is something going on in the project that might blow the budget completely. The client is asking for row-level security, and today we haven't got that. We've got obviously form-level security, whether people can access a form or not. The issue is going to be here is all down to contractual obligations. The client says it's in, the PM says it's not. If we have to implement it, it's going to blow out the project. So this is a major concern, Stephen. We're going to have to employ somebody to deliver this because I know you and the team are really busy on the current enhancements. I'm wondering, Alex, can you help with SQL Server row-level security?
Yes, I can assist with SQL Server role level security. Please provide more details on what needs to be implemented.
Alex, I have 3 different roles and I'd like to write the code in .NET 8 and enhance what the team's already done.
Certainly, I can help with writing the code in .NET 8 and enhancing the existing work. Please share the specific requirements for each role so I can proceed.
Well, that looks like good news, Stephen. If our new employee can work on the extra bits of code, that means we might be able to still deliver in time. Look, great news for the guys. We're going to make the budget then with the help of Alex. Alex, say goodbye to the team.
Goodbye, team. Looking forward to our next meeting.
Team.
So,
Team.
I think the gist of it is that as Clive was showing us, we can create those prompts. We can train our models to actually do some work for us. And now we can actually turn those agents into real virtual agents that will be part of a team's call. And then we can interact with them and then we can give them requirements. And then they have access to the ADO, they have access to Git. And you guys were asking about CI/CD integration. You probably don't need that. You probably just need to jump on a call with one of your agents and be able to ask them some stuff. Well, Gab was talking about all the different disciplines. This is an example where we're doing pro code and then making changes to Dataverse and so on. One of the other things that I pitched in the beginning, Jiva and Ragavan were telling me that actually there are some organizations doing that at the moment. is to look at something like a statement of work that your organization might have produced, look at what are the requirements that you've asked for, and then see if what you're delivering is actually in line with the statement of work. So I think we talked about that. I'm going to demonstrate it using ChatGPT, just to show what can be done. So the one thing is that we will get a list of requirements, for example, and then we want to turn those into something that would go in ADO, and they have to be in a very specific format. So as a something, I want to something so that I can do something else. So in here, let me see if I actually can get it to work. So I've got a document that has the requirements. This is generated by ChatGPT itself. So I said, write a set of requirements that are going to capture some customer information on application. Make sure the first paragraph talks about what the actual requirement is, and the second requirement talks about the infrastructure that we need to use, and then make sure it talks about Dataverse somewhere. So Power Platform and Dataverse as the backend for secure and scalable capabilities. So that's all good. So I'm going to go and select that, upload that document, make sure that's not the right one. Good. That specific folder. Okay, so I can say, write me the requirements in the format as a user. I want to action or that, something like that. And it will analyze what's in there, and it will go and create all the requirements that we need. And that can be your prompt that you can feed into Azure DevOps. This is part of your functional work done because you've got the requirements from the customer, you reviewed them, and then you say, generate that for me, put it in ADO, you review it, and then you start your work. Now, the next part of the demo that I wanted to demonstrate is within this, I took this prompt, the ones that you guys saw, and I removed anything to do with the infrastructure. If I open that second document in here, it's not the right one. But what I can do, I'll take those, right? So let's copy those requirements and then have a look at here. Right, so I've got all the different bits as a business user, and then I'm going to remove, for example, the things that talk about infrastructure and all of that. Automate Azure App Service, blah blah blah. So I'll remove quite a lot of those bits, and I'll keep some simple bits. But now the prompt is missing information. So let's see if I can say, given those two documents, check if the ADO requirements match the original requirements in the requirements.docx. Right, so what we're doing in here is having a look at what our functional consultants would have done in ADO, populated all the user stories, but then there is another statement of work document somewhere else written by legal people that we typically don't read and don't understand. But it's really important to match those two. The legal people are not going to read ADO because it's too technical and geeky. And then they'll realize that, hang on, there's a mismatch in here. Well, as we were talking today, is how do we get those two languages to talk together? And I think, Nathan, you were talking a lot about sort of this creative capability, but also using it for things that are unknown, things that are unpredictable. Yeah. And then you use two different jargons, you mix them together, and here is telling you the key differences is the technical implementation is missing. So you're not talking about the Azure Stack, you're not talking about the Power Platform. And that's a very good example where you can safeguard your business from delivering the wrong thing that was not, or that is in the statement of work, but you're not delivering further down the track. So a very good example here that we're seeing where, from a discipline perspective, you're talking about project management leveraging AI to be able to do their work better, because now they're mixing technical jargons with legal jargons and making sure they've got the right information. We had a look at how you can use it for generating your requirements. So use it for functional consultant to be able to do that. We had a look at how you can get a pro dev to do the work and also make sure that it's actually feeding all the information correctly and then generating the code. And as you go further down, in my presentation, I showed you how you can use it for testing, generating data for test cases and different permutations, and then feed that into your unit test. And then further down, you can even consider, all right, well, now I want my DevOps engineer to go and deploy the changes that I've made. So how do I create a pipeline? I've never created a YAML pipeline for Azure DevOps. You can go into your Copilot, GitHub Copilot, and you can say, go and create a pipeline for me. So this pipeline that you guys see in here, I didn't create that. I went and asked Copilot, the GitHub Copilot, to generate a YAML fragment for me. And it did that. So now I don't understand what it's doing. So I can go, what does that pipeline? And it's going to analyze that specific YAML, and then it's going to give me a good description of everything that it's actually doing, and then tell me whether even if it has things that it can be improved. And I can ask it. I'm like, okay, well, given that pipeline, is there anything that you can improve about it? And it will talk about maybe security, naming conventions, changes that it needs to do. So in here, it's talking about, the triggers, what are the variables, deployment process, the file platform. It tells you each step, what it's doing in here. This is to import the solution that you need. And it's accurate. It's exactly what you want. I think with all of that, you would realize that it's actually going to be more and more useful on our day-to-day lives and how we do things. But then as Clive was demonstrating, it still is like creating a few mistakes. Sometimes it doesn't do the right thing, and I think this is where it's important for us as a community to understand that and understand how we can actually direct it to do the right thing. And then we are the safety pair of eyes that will go into the different sort of levels of bits that it's generating. So probably a question for everybody in here is like, where do you see our skill sets being applied moving forward, given that a lot of the heavy lifting is being done by, or the mundane stuff is being done by the platform?
If we start with Alex in there, right, and I try to apply my personal analogy this morning in there. Alex is a developer. He had applied the skills to the developer as a C# and CSS, maybe SQL, we just seen that. He also gave some knowledge about the company. And then during the conversation, we're giving the context, the memory. So the conversation, transcript, and also she was asking for more questions. So there's going to be the next step. We're going to have some of those agents doing that. And also instruct Alex not to commit to do a pull request, right? So we have a human there to do it. Maybe before we get to a human to do something, we can ask another agent to go and review. We get to a human. So slowly can start automating, becoming more comfortable with AI doing things for us. So it's just as a matter of starting small, as Clive has shown, the automating all the stuff for us.
Yeah.
And this GitHub will now do pull request, and then we're going to decide to do somebody to review.
Yeah.
And then we're going to decide to get a release manager, project manager, and so on. So we start going there.
Yeah, I think what Clive said is true, that you audit first, and then you get bored of auditing. You realize that there's no
Build
point.
trust.
Yeah, you will build trust. You will trust it to actually generate the right stuff, and then you won't have to look back.
A key part about getting the right stuff is giving it the right context, giving it just enough information. Because if you tell it when you were born and what you for lunch and all of that stuff is noise. If you say please and thank you, that's noise.
Yeah,
those are tokens that you're using up for something that it doesn't get anything out of.
Don't
right?
be polite.
Pleasantries, AI doesn't care. Right?
Yeah.
So you're just using your currency on bad things. So it's about being efficient, about iterating quickly, and refining the data.
Absolutely.
You see the output and you refine it a little bit and then iterate.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you were demonstrating is that certainty, right? And that resonated with what you were talking about, Nathan, in terms of, there's there's automation, and there is the AI agent that can do stuff. So at first, when I was doing my demo, I was trying to get AI to extract the schema from Dataverse by calling the OData API and then showing me everything, and then reformatting it to a CSV file. And then when I realized it's a very deterministic action, and I want the exact result every time, and I know exactly how to extract it. Rather than ask AI to do it and to depend on its output, I decided to ask AI to write a program to do it for me. And it wrote the script to do it. And then the script was part of my execution. The script now always gives me the right information because it's automation and it's deterministic. And that feeds this information to the rest of what I'm doing, which was generating the payload. So Nathan, how would you, like, when do you decide? Do I do it like with AI or do I actually go through automation?
It's a good question. So I would say if it is a known quantity, we know exactly what needs to happen. So payroll, right? As good as the LLMs are, I don't want an LLM running payroll because, we don't know what's, maybe this month I get paid $1 million and next month it's no soup for you. So, I want standard automation doing that. But when we get into if then logic, switches, that type of thing, and we're dealing with unstructured data, email, WhatsApp messages, text messages, blocks of text, that's where agents excel. So if you get a chance, Lisa Crosby has a brilliant video where she takes you step by step through how to set up your first Copilot agent. One thing she kept saying was language. And so what Clive was showing you in his demo where his agent was filling in descriptions and stuff, this is stuff we usually skip as Power Platform people because we're busy and we don't have time for it. These things are critically important with AI because it will help it understand the context and what it is that it needs to do. So
And understand the context quicker.
exactly.
So like if I give it an entire flow JSON and there's thousands of lines in that, that's a lot for it to go along and process and then determine what it does. If I give it a short description and the description of my flow, then it just needs to read that bit to know what's going on.
Exactly.
But one thing you then, Clive, when you start interacting with the Copilot, you say was confusing, didn't give that. So your process was to start to refine your prompts.
Refine the prompts,
and asking the Copilot to help you to refine your prompts, right? Using the knowledge you have today and trying to transfer the knowledge back to the Copilot.
Yeah. And that's something that I don't think it's very good at yet. I was trying to get it to write the prompts for me and I get variable results. Like I found that maybe it hasn't been trained on prompting. Like maybe the knowledge that it has, that the model was trained on was before this
Or invented.
before prompting was really a big thing, right? So maybe the next generation of models will be really good at prompting because they've been trained on all of the previous prompts.
But that's the thing. You're asking Copilot to do something he doesn't know. Do we need to build another agent to do that for us?
Maybe. Yeah. Here's my good prompts. Here's my bad prompts. Don't do those ones. Please write some of these. Yeah. And but the prompts they'll be different depending on the context, right? So my prompts in Dataverse, me telling it about YAML, it's completely different to your prompts for doing your pipeline or your prompts for generating requirements, right? So
I want to get back to something that you had in your presentation because you were talking about vision. And one of the things that as good as AI is, it will never be human. It will never do what we do. And I think I hadn't thought about this, but for you, it kind of like made that penny drop where it's vision and where we want these systems to go, where we want our products to go. I think that's going to be an increasingly important part of what we do. Having technical knowledge and being able to express it, but maybe not necessarily being as hands-on doing as we've traditionally been.
Yeah, and I think something on that is that like, we can be really good at providing the vision, right? But we're really bad at the reactive stuff, right? Like something's errored, something's broken. I need to log that. Then I need somebody to fix it. Then I need somebody to test it. Like that bit is where we get in the way.
Yep.
Where we're slow, right? We have to communicate. I have to send an email to support. Support picks up the email. They look at the email. Nah, it doesn't do this. They look in the environment. Oh, it does do that. Like those iterations of error, view, investigate. those could become a lot faster, right, with agents.
Absolutely.
Didn't Louis Baybot just release something about along those lines with a process erroring out and having an agent read it and fix it?
Yeah, like with my one, I got it to add a web resource to a form and bind the event, and that worked. But then when I loaded the form, it got an error, and so I just copied the error from the model-driven app, and I pasted it into the chat. Like, oh yeah, I linked the wrong onload method. Let me fix that for you. So
Yeah.
if I could automate that, where I had an agent that could test in the browser, I could go and open the form and follow a predetermined set of things just using natural language or just using recording, right? Like if I could just record myself using CRM and say, go do this 1,000 times and try add some variability in our pest automation. Just imagine how good that's going to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like a good example about self-recovering from errors. One of my colleagues was actually trying to use some of the AI capabilities to build something. And he went and instructed it what JavaScript libraries he wanted to use. And it went, okay, I understand that. I'm going to use npm to start installing those libraries. And as it did that, it came across an error. It's like, oh, it's like I cannot proceed. Let me search what that error is. And it figured out what that error means and how to recover from it. It's like, okay, let me try a different way of compiling that. And tried a different way, and it worked, and it carried on with the instructions. So it can get to a point where it knows that there is an error, it knows how to recover from that error, and how to progress. And I think that's also going to help us with all of that. So interesting thing you said about that feedback. So I remember when I was a student ages ago at university, and I was telling my professor, oh, I can do it faster than the machine. And he's like, you can never do it faster than the machine. I'm like, oh, look, it's just one click. And he said, yeah, but that movement of one click is what makes you slower. Machine is just going from one instruction to the other and is going to execute that specific instruction. And as you were saying, is all that human interaction where you have to go and investigate.
Latency.
Talk to someone, exactly. And all of that is gone. So even the question earlier about how fast is it, even if it's slow, you can just let it do
thousands of times faster,
and then go make yourself a coffee and come back, and you'll have a result, and it can work 24/7. You know, that's the advantage, I think. Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't get tired, and it doesn't.
I don't see being useful running because to write the JavaScript, upload that to your form, open there and test. It's probably half an hour. That's took a minute.
If you know what you're doing, yeah, could be 4 hours for somebody else.
Yeah, and I think
Be a day.
Yeah, what's really interesting about what Clive was doing is that it was a code-first approach. So, like, when I pitched that idea to Scott Duro, do you guys know Scott Duro?
Yeah.
Ex-MVP, and now he works for Microsoft. So I met him in Prague a couple of weeks ago. We were doing the Update Days Power Platform conference there. And I'm like, hey, I've got that idea, you know, like, what if you can do pretty much what Clive was doing, like give it some instructions and then it can generate the code first and then synchronize, and then you've got all your configuration going. He's like, yeah, it's like Plan Designer. Like, oh, man, like Plan Designer sucks compared to what we're trying to do in here. Like Plan Designer, you have to tell it what to do and gets it wrong. And like the first iteration of Plan Designer, I give it an exact ERD. It didn't get it, and it created something completely random. I'm like, come on, it's not the same thing. Whereas what Clive was demonstrating is precise execution of exactly what we want because we've trained it to be precise. And I think this code-first approach is very powerful because my goal is to not go to the make.powerapps.com because it's slow. I don't know where things are. Most of the time they change. There's an update and then you don't know where the configuration is. And then they infuse a lot of AI into it. And most of the time the AI doesn't work and all of that. This is deterministic, this to a certain extent. But you can see the results. You can tell it exactly what you want. You can do the PRs when you see those code fragments, the YAMLs, and then you can push them and then you can synchronize into your environment. And then once you've got that, and this is something that is hopefully coming in the pipeline, is to generate solutions out of those YAML files. So right now we don't have the tooling to do that, but then you can have your artifact that you can push into a CI/CD pipeline and move into the environments.
And like, imagine if Microsoft gave us a schema for the YAML file. And the IDE could validate the things that we're putting into that YAML file.
Yeah.
and it could test itself. It would get feedback from the schema saying, hey, no, don't try put that in Dataverse.
Yeah. That would be good.
Set guide rails, right? And so the more guide rails you can set, the more accurate it's going to be.
Absolutely.
So I think Microsoft going to go down to the path they're going to be subscribing for agents. Clive is doing here. He's getting the common functionality of AI, and he's providing some skills, providing structures, and give some knowledge. So his own knowledge is training the AI. We're going to be doing that. I believe at some point that's repeatable across everywhere, right? You're going to be able to copy there somewhere. So Microsoft will be using Plain Designer to do that for us. They are missing probably the skills and the knowledge and all the stuff that's missing there. And then once you go to the pipelines for testing there, we're going to be able to get an automated tester agent there. Right? And then somebody to click that. We're going to be subscribing for those agents. We're going to have specific skills, like people. You go to the market to hire somebody. I want to develop it. Well, more specific. I don't want a Java. I want a C# developer, somebody with experience. You're going to find those agents out there. Somewhere you're going to subscribe. And I think that's the marketplace that Microsoft.
Exactly. So I think this is something that you told me. So moving forward, the ISVs, just about products, but it's about AI products, agents that you can go and buy and install that will improve your productivity significantly. Really good.
Question. So in economics, they have the concept of the middle income trap. So you've got low income countries whose competitive advantage is our labor is cheap, and so we manufacture there. And you've got high income countries like we live in, where our competitive advantages were highly productive, and so we can get paid. But then you've got countries where it's that middle income where workers want to get paid more, but they're not adding enough value, and so it's called the middle income trap, because it's hard to kind of make the leap from low income to high income. With what we're seeing here, are low code technologies as we've known them middle income trap? Because the whole thing of low code was that somebody like me can go get hands on, and I've got apps and automations and stuff. But with a prompt, we can now do that with AI, and we don't necessarily need that abstraction layer of low code in between.
I completely think you're on the right track there, because the more I use it, the less I think we even need low code. It's just about being like, I don't need like Rami. When he showed the YAML, like, he doesn't need to know it as long as it works and we know that the thing that provided it is reliable, right? So if I don't need to be able to understand the JavaScript that gets generated or the underlying code that gets generated, I just need to know that what I've asked for is going to happen, right? And now you can do that. So why do you need low code? You just need to be able to articulate.
There's low code.
It's no code now, because it's genuinely no code, because it's just words.
Exactly. And in fact, like Ryan is, I can see he's writing messages in the chat. One of the things that I was talking to him about is, hey, there's that requirement where we need to change HTML into a PDF. I'm like, well, you can do it the low-code way. And I showed him how he can build a Power Automate to take that HTML, generate a file, save that file into OneDrive, take it out from OneDrive, convert it into PDF, low-code, purely in Power Automate, and all of that is possible. Or I showed him a couple of options on how he can use it in ProCode. And then he came back to me like half an hour later. He's like, I've done it. I'm like, well, did you use Power Automate? He's like, no, I just used ProCode. I'm like, how did you have time for it? He's like, GPT did it for me, right? So he's like, just give it the prompt, give it the actual, I think he actually used GitHub Copilot to do that, but he gave it the prompt. He said, this is the library I want to use, and then write me an application that would do this for me. And it even wrote him a user interface to test it, and then the unit test and everything associated with it. So to your point, as we have this prompt where we can tell it what to do, and it can generate the code for us, which usually is faster and more efficient, then this low code becomes a question on like, what are we going to do with it?
It just gets in the way, right? Because then it needs to be transformed into its underlying language so it can be computed, right? But that bit is, again, just overhead.
And code has a lot of advantages because we have decades of experience in it. But in a way, we bridged that gap today. So one of the things that I've been complaining to Microsoft about for a very long time is with ProCode, we have decades of experience when it comes to quality when it comes to monitoring, static analysis, right? You write your classes, you've got ReSharper, you've got Visual Studio, it will tell you you're doing something stupid. That's not the best way. Or how about you use this design pattern, or how about you change that? Or it gives you security vulnerability, like you've got your password in here or something like that. But we never had anything equivalent in the low-code world. Like you can go and say, hey, am I doing the right Power Automate? I've seen some Power Automates that go for like, multiple branches, switch cases, and then things that are indented and then
Doesn't want to name names here, Nathan.
like calling multiple child flows and all of that. It's like, oh man, it's so difficult to maintain. Yet there's nothing telling you that this is wrong. Right? What Clive showed us today is that, hey, you can actually prompt it to do static analysis on low code. So look at all my Power Automates, make sure that I've got the right triggers at the top, but also I've got the right connections, that not everybody can connect it because that's a security vulnerability. This is static analysis on low code. We can do the same with Power FX. We can do the same with security roles. Are my read-only roles actually read-only, or did we introduce something else? It's something that I've been asking for 10 years from Microsoft. You spent last week just building that, right? So that's pretty amazing what we can do today.
And like, as you say, with being able to do the static analysis, like I was showing Gab, the one where I got it to read a flow and document the Power Automate for me. It was able to read all of the Power Automate expressions and then convert those accurately in PowerShell for me. So it's like those kind of things where it's trying to read expression languages and stuff. It's really good at doing analysis on those. And something else that, like, I think there's things that I'd like to mention. One is that we're missing at the moment is a really good agent for the browser. So like the thing that I've been finding life-changing for that agent in the IDE is its interaction with its surroundings.
Yes.
So that agent has access to my terminal, access to my code base, access to all the knowledge that I've given it, right? And then I'm missing that for other applications, right? Imagine if I could provide my prompt library to my browser, and my browser could just keep iterating based on my prompts, and I could say, click on home, and then it would read the HTML of the website, and it would read the prompt, and then it would action that interface where the agent can then interface to the browser. Missing things like that, right? Yeah. And I feel like that's on the horizon, right? Soon when I get somebody to test something, I'm going to get an agent to test it. I'm going to get 10 agents to test it 100 times and tell me if there's any errors, right? And we're just missing that application that sits there interfacing to the tool that we use.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to Microsoft. So Marcel Ferreira, if you guys know him, he used to be Oakland based, and then now he's living in Seattle. I told him, with all that AI technologies, I had one of the customers or one of the vendors talk to us. They do document generation. Then they showed me their product. I'm like, but where's AI? Like, you want me to learn how to write those documents and how to design them and all of that? I don't have time for that. I need an agent. They're like, oh man, we should hire you. Like you're reading our minds and what to do. Point is, it's actually an expectation today that whatever you're building is AI enabled. From an end user perspective, definitely. In the corporate world, it's coming there, right? So if you go and read the latest release notes by Microsoft, the Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform that were released earlier this month, you'll notice that there is a whole section on how to improve your prompt development, improving the quality of the outputs of your AI agents, monitoring, analyzing, because Satya Nadella knows this is the future. And in fact, we had a lot of scenarios where we've been asking for Microsoft for specific features, and they go, back burner. We're just focusing on well, not just, but there's a big focus on Copilot and AI capabilities, and that's for a good reason. Because in a way, I feel like there's a step ahead of us. They're thinking about the future. I talked to some of those product managers, and they said, when we start building the vision on what we want to iterate, like what's our next deliverable, they start with, forget everything you know about how you do things today. Think about how you're going to do it in 10 years. Let's start there, and let's bring it back to reality in terms of what we can deliver today. And the future is not, just doing coding and then command lines and things like that. The future is actually AI enabled to be able to do some of that stuff. And to the point that maybe some of that low code stuff becomes a little bit irrelevant because there's a better tool that can generate things that are more efficient for you and then remove that extra layer that is superfluous.
You've given me an idea with the static analysis and the requirements example. Like, and before I even give it to a tester, I could take my user stories that are meant to be in this release, and I could ask Claude to go through each user story and then check the underlying customizations to see whether that has actually been done. Like, did they actually add the field on the form? Did they actually write the JavaScript? Did they? Or they can do your testing for you as well, just by doing analysis on the YAML and the customization, right? Before somebody even tries it in the UI.
Yeah. Or even better, you release something you're not supposed to be. You do a little bit extra, because that's another problem, is that you might be working on other stories that you don't attach, and then you release it, but there's actually some extra baggage that is going there.
So at the moment, you can add as context your Git changes.
Yeah.
What I really want them to add is, here's a set of commits. Go review these commits, figure out the delta, and then analyze that.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
that would be
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
It is an interactive session, so
I'm
feel
not
free to
my
ask.
stuff is more of a personal. So when I think about this stuff, right, the power of Power Platform probably for me it seems to be morphing more of it's a tool set that democratizes stuff. And if you're a pro dev, then it's quite painful to use because you can see all the holes. But if you are like me and you don't really know what you're doing, it's quite easy to drag and drop. But do you see Power Platform Suite? Do you see Dataverse at more risk of being heavily affected by this, or the Power Platform Suite? And by that, I mean, I think that we'll move to a world where we still have this kind of console of creating Power Apps, but perhaps it's not creating them on the Dataverse, it's just writing them in whatever and tapping into whatever transactional database, and the back end becomes a bit more flexible about what you use.
I think, like, the argument about low code and JavaScript and C# and things like that is always answered with, there's room for both. So we will still need both because there'll be different user bases, like I showed in my presentation. Is the pro coders and the low coders, and then they overlap. There's always going to be those two camps, if you want, of what people are expecting from a specific platform. I think, and it's also difficult to answer because there's a lot of progression in that space, and you don't know what the future is going to look like, whether it's really going to make things redundant. No, so
there's still some things that I think are really hard to articulate, right? Like, try and describe a form in sentences.
Yes, exactly.
Like something visual, something that's like, I want it to be this wide, I want it to be that skinny, I want it to be, you know what I mean? Those kind of things, if I'm trying to, like, that would be slower, right? Me trying to write that out in a verbose way as a paragraph is a lot slower than me dragging things around on a form. So I think the whole, how I want to visualize data is still going to have input from people and need people to be able to drag things around on forms.
Yeah.
But then the automation behind,
should it have a need of have a database, right? So even what we're trying to describe in here, we need to go and save stuff to database.
data structured.
Our platform has infrastructure about security roles and all the stuff that's still applicable, even if using AI for the infrastructure. You need to, some of the processes you need a form, some of the processes you might just talk to a chatbot, like you have a Copilot for sales now. Behind the scenes to use the database, so the agent is just a person doing something for you. The person should go open the form.
Forms might become a lot more conversational.
More conversation, but the data capture, maybe visualization, maybe some of the stuff's still there. But infrastructure certainly.
So I'm going to go way out on a limb here and probably get in a lot of trouble, but our platform is I think always going to be around. It's because, I mean, it's ultimately a development platform, and it can be pro or low code depending on how you want to use it. There will always be some sort of need for applications. There will always be a need for Dataverse. I think you can make a really strong use case for things like Power Automate, just because, you know, it is the Swiss Army knife of the Power Platform. But I would say that if what Clive and Rami demonstrated today is the direction that we're going. I would say technologies like Power Effects have a expiration date because it's ultimately just an abstraction layer between the pro code that's being written and the low coder like myself. I would say those types of things would have expiration dates.
Add something.
Yeah.
I think just the thing which Clive described about the UI. My primary involvement with the company which I'm working is majorly on the Power Pages.
Yeah.
So I released a video a week ago, which is like same concept what Clive has demonstrated, but using a different IDE or cursor. So the difference between Visual Studio Code and Cursor, it's much more powerful. The same time, it's using the same model, Cloud Sonnet and Anthropic model, but I can see it's really clever enough to identify the bugs as soon as the repositories landed. Instead of you writing the prompt, it can detect itself. There are like bugs here, and it can fix by itself.
Yeah.
Which was
And then it can write tests to make sure that the same bug never happens again. Yeah.
which was so cool. Like I was so surprised. Like within maybe 2 minutes, I built a tic-tac-toe game, complete logic, posted in Power Pages, just within 2 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. So powerful.
I think there's still coming back to the Power Automate thing. Like same thing again with like it's really hard for me to describe a form in words. There's also reasons why we have like ERDs and process flow diagrams, right? Because to describe a large process is hard, right? Like if I just try and do that by words and to validate the paths that can go down, it's really difficult for me to understand and interpret from just a set of sentences. So I think maybe our interface to prompt will be the ERD diagram, or it'll be the process flow diagram that we agree. Well, yep, we need this process flow, and we would feed the picture in, and then the Power Automate would just build itself based on the picture.
Yeah.
We would still need to build the picture, right?
Yeah.
So we would like to use the picture because it's easy for us to all see it and understand the flow, right? So
Yeah. Exactly.
Will you need forms?
I've been
Setting agentic, right? Do
I
we?
don't even know if we need buttons anymore, right? Because like if I say delete that row or delete that record, do I need a delete button? If I could just say create a new record that has these attributes, do I even need a create new button? So maybe not. I just interact with.
But this
Probably a
is a
lot.
very good question.
Yeah, that's like
We need forms.
going to a school without a notebook. You can't get rid of papers right now, but still the papers are there. But still my daughter uses iPad, she still uses a laptop. They still write.
Yeah.
You still need to have certain formality. I think it takes time to get rid of forms. One of the points he says SAS will not exist in the future, but probably what is going to exist is a form. Something else will come in the future. I think before 2016, nobody had any knowledge about Power Platform. And so we're all using Dynamics, and I was my Dynamics consultant. Apps came in, but nobody implemented more driven apps. But we moved away from that. We are into a discussion of Power Platform now. It's not even called topic about Dynamics space.
Yeah.
So we continuously evolve, but certain things will not just go away just like that. It will take times to, probably years to go away from that model.
And people still need to be able to see the data, right? Well,
Yes.
maybe they don't need to see it. Maybe they can just be dictated it, right? So maybe you don't need a form. They can
I think
listen to your data.
Can I just add what you're just saying there? We're all in this environment. What about why are we doing it? Because if we focus on why, I think most of this will go away. Why do we need the data? So CEO can read it, can people read it? Because we're creating it through the forms or whatever. My vision personally is like Copilot, that you talk to it and it presents it in a way that you can understand.
correct. Yes.
And your culture, your idea, your idealism, whatever it is on your profile. So therefore, because like, I don't know about you guys, but I use Alexa pretty much most of the day when I'm walking around the house and I have an idea and I ask Alexa, could you describe to me this? I have this idea. 99 times out of 100, she'll come up with an answer, but I cannot see it unless if I go to a screen. So therefore, the whole reason why we're doing all of this is present something on a screen to somebody that's going to make sense to somebody else. The customer, though, all they want to see is the report, the screen, the something. If I'm a consumer, go to a website, understand what it is. But how do I get to a website? I ask Copilot, can you show me the websites that have these forms of data?
Yeah.
That's where we're missing the point, that we're all on the right path, but we need to think what should be happening today that we are thinking about 5 years' time.
Exactly. So the copybook analogy is actually really good. So I remember the progression of how things went into digital transformation. So first you had paper forms, right? So you go apply for a passport, it'll give you a paper form, you would fill in the information, attach a picture to it, and then submit that in the post. And they digitized that. The first iteration of that digitization is to take that paper form and turn it into a digital form on the screen, where you had to do exactly the same thing and all the information. And it wasn't smart enough because all we knew is paper forms, right? So, what's your name? This is my name. What's your child's name? This is my child's name. What's his father's name? This is my name, right? Whereas now, in the second generation of digital transformations, they realized we can leverage digital. We can know that this is the parent, so we don't have to repeat this information. We know that they typed in their passport number, so we can retrieve information about who they are in the application without them having to type it again. So this is a form of leveraging digital, and we're moving further away from the paper form itself. Now, in terms of do we need forms? I think forms as we know them will change. And as David was saying, it can be visual or it could be in audio. I think forms will turn into what we know today as adaptive cards, right? So you go to Teams and you say, hey, give me some information. And it goes and fetch all this information that you need. It could be normalized in databases. It could be, one table, JSON, semi-structured, whatever. And it will surface it in a visual way that you can understand what it's actually doing. So if we're talking about case management, for example, if we talk about passports or citizenship or any type of case management, a lot of it is click, 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 go to the relationship, go to that tab, understand what's happening in that process. What if it can actually collect all of this information and bring it back to you in a prompt where it gives you a summary of what you need to know, or maybe a visual or a picture? So Anthony Butcher and I, when we were looking at that video, I said, it's good that Alex in that example can answer your questions, but can she supplement that with a visual to tell you this is where we are in ADO, or this is a diagram that I worked on that actually complements the voice information that I'm giving? So about 10 years ago, when I first became an MVP, I had the chance to see James Phillips address the MVP community in Seattle. He used to be the corporate vice president of Dynamics 365. Power Platform was not born back then. And then he was telling us that historically, we had data on top of forms. And around that time, we went through a few transformations. There was a lot of system of engagements, if you guys remember, in the early 2010s, where mobile was a big thing and all of that. And then the big boom was IoT. And he was telling us there's no more a form where you type the information on it. There's actually data collected from everywhere around us. And that today is something that we take for granted. Our phones listen to us, our cars, retrieve telemetry. Our houses are smart and they're monitoring everything that is happening. This is one form of digital transformation that we've seen. And now the next step is to actually turn that into, the intelligence that is going to surface that data back to us, where it's not going to be forms, but an alteration of that. And I think this is definitely the future. The good thing is that I always say is that I'm very grateful to be in the position that I'm in today. Like the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 has been my bread and butter for my entire professional career. And it's not like, some of the MVPs that I talk to, they're like, we saw the Power Platform and when we bet our career on it. I didn't do that. I didn't analyze anything. I was sitting there and someone came to me and was like, hey, do you want to do CRM? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. What is CRM? And then that's how my career progressed. So it's by pure luck that I ended up here. But I'm grateful because Microsoft gets it in terms of what the future is going to look like. And as the platform adapts and then changes into what that future is, we're part of it. We're doing it. So it's really helping me at least to pay my mortgage. But it's really good to see that you're on the right boat and then you're heading the right direction. And a lot of that is actually like a lot of thought is put into. There's a lot of things that happens behind doors that the public doesn't know. Some of the MVPs know. There's a lot of stuff that the MVPs don't know that Microsoft is taking as a strategic direction that is really actually making a difference to the community and to the way the world is moving. So yeah, it's really good to be in that position.
You think about all of the effort we put into forms and views and all of that to try and guide the user to fill this in and fill that in. Before you go to the next step, you need like all the business. You don't need any of that anymore.
Exactly.
Because as long as your agent knows what the process is, what you need to capture, it can guide the user on the right journey. So form field level validation, that's no longer going to be needed, right?
Yeah.
And then you think about it when, like, do you know, you get to that last page where it's like, please confirm all of this information, and everyone skims past it and goes next. Like now your agent could actually be like, is your name Rami? Click yes.
Yes.
Is your last name this? You have to
Yeah.
click yes, right?
Exactly.
Like it could guide you to make sure that
Validation.
to validate that you've input the right data and that you're actually reading it as
Yeah.
well.
That's just like on your bank form when you're making a payment. Your name correct.
Yeah.
What you've got to do now, finally, somebody actually gets it.
Exactly. So as the new patterns come up, then they become the standard, and then we will adapt to using that.
Probably the most important thing as professionals in this space is not to get dogmatic about things and this is the way we do it or the way we've always done it, but to have a broad, just get broad experiences, have a broad perspective, and to expect that the stuff that we all do today wasn't invented when I was in school.
Exactly.
My job title didn't exist when I was in school, and what we're going to be doing 5-10 years from now probably hasn't been invented yet. But if we stay flexible to move with it, we'll be relevant. But if we don't, if you say, no, I like building Power Apps, it's the only thing I'm going to do. Well, at some point, as much as I love writing Power Effects, at some point, an agent can do that for me now. So
Yeah. Just keep trying, keep changing. Because like when I was preparing my one, like I tried 6 different agents. I tried the original version of VS Code. I tried the insider version. I tried inline editing. I tried the chat. I tried the agent. Keep tweaking it, and then
and then all of that gets distilled.
Oh, 3.0.
This.
So you, because you solution stores in GitHub, how does it work with a managed environment like publishing solutions?
So that's your unmanaged customizations, right? So that's your development environment, production if you do things. Yeah.
I'm talking about the environment, it's not a solution. I'm talking about the managed environment. So when an environment is managed, you're restricted to your IP address in a specific subnetwork. You cannot take it outside your network. Its solution is stored in GitHub.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about a managed solution. I'm talking about managed environment. So what is the impact?
Still the same.
The same?
It's the same, right? Because you're still then just promoting that unmanaged customization goes back into your dev environment, and that gets extracted using a pipeline or something, managed solution, and then that goes into your managed environment.
Yeah.
So managed solution.
Get it.
Not the
So
managed
it's all-
solution, just a managed.
So all you need is a connection between your environment and Git. So this is the out-of-the-box Dataverse Git integration, and be able to edit
Through the VNet.
whatever way you want, as long as you can access your code. All you need.
So even if it is a VNet, still allows you to connect through Git.
If you have that, even if you want to use like I don't know if it's even possible, like an online version of VS Code that is hosted in your VNet, and you don't need to do anything.
Yeah, it works.
It
Yeah.
works.
That works.
Host of VS Code is
Yeah.
browser-based one.
Exactly. So we've got 5 minutes left, or just under that. Any other questions? Anything else that you guys want to know, or any feedback even for the event? Or
Thank you for having us.
oh, you're welcome.
Thank you to Microsoft for the cup.
and the technology.
And the technology.
Yeah.
And seats.
And paying my mortgage. So I think like just the whole purpose of those events, as I mentioned, is for us as speakers to actually upskill and learn about things that we typically don't talk about. We quite often try to find new topics every time we're presenting so that we're not too repetitive, but also to share some of that knowledge and give you like a distilled version of everything that we've learned, all the lesson learned, what to do, what not to do, and like the paradigms and the shifts and the way we do things, and just inspire something. So even if you took 1% out of what we said today, that's a big win for us. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. It's a great pleasure to have such an audience today. And